Alright, so I watched Star Wars The Last Jedi, and I was pretty impressed. More impressed than Blade Runner 2049, although I was partially biased because, like, Blade Runner 2049, no miniatures. At least they didn't do traditional miniatures. It looked more like the prequel miniatures, if anything. I didn't feel like it was a real Blade Runner film. This Star Wars film, Star Wars The Last Jedi, Episode 8, did I think it was a Star Wars film? It does the Force very good. It does the evolution. It does the sequel stuff good. Like with the Star Destroyers, you have like the turrets on them, like as if they were Death Stars. There is one problem about it being a Star Wars film, and I'll get to it in a moment. Although I'm still very favorable to this film. I like Rogue One a lot. I don't know if it's worse than Rogue One, but it's definitely not as good as Empire Strikes Back. It's close to it, but not quite. But some of the Rian Johnson stuff is just great. I'll get into that in a moment. Let me see if I can go through this in chronological order. The opening crawl, sort of boring. It didn't really tell us anything that happened in between the time from this movie and the other movie. So, well, they have it. It seemed like it was obligatory. They could have changed it to something else. I feel like that was like a producer thing, and I feel like Rian Johnson and producers did not get along for Star Wars, much like Colin Trevorrow and Jurassic World. Star Wars Episode 9, which I'll get to in a moment. The mini Death Star things with the Star Destroyer made more sense to me than the Death Planet thing in Episode 7. I don't think they're gonna do like they don't quite. It's mainly the turret thing. They don't do the whole blowing up a whole planet thing, but it's interesting. Poe and Organic start off with a good dynamic. Getting worried, making sure they have each other's backs in the battlefield in the beginning. I like how BB-8 repairs weapons. He does a lot of stuff in this film. R2, BB-8. Do you think they have characters? I just thought about this now. I'm not sure if it's true or not. BB-8 has friends. BB-8 has quirkiness. I don't think he has an arc. That's something I'll get into in a little bit. I wasn't quite sure what was going on in that scene with the Death Star with a lot of bombs dropping. I'll get into that a little bit. But it was cool for a James Bond opening, but I'll have problems with it later on as I get into the rest of the review. I felt like that part was edited differently, or at least should have been edited differently, and maybe Rian Johnson had different ideas prior to it getting screwed up. The producers, I think, were issue in this film, much like the DC producers have been issues in the DC films. I'll get back to the James Bond opening in a moment. Porg is introduced, and I am mixed on that. Porg is really a toy. Like Captain Phasma, everyone said Captain Phasma, she was just a toy, but I felt she had way more character in Episode 7 than Porg does in Episode 8. Porg is on the same planet as Luke, and I'll get to this later, Chewie, and Rey. It's distracting. Like, before, it was implied, or at least I thought it was implied, that the planet was abandoned. And I'm pretty sure J.J. Abrams knew this, because I'm pretty sure he read the Episode 8 script. I don't know if it was before or after he made the film, but it was before. But he did read the script, sorry. So, why are there no Porgs in Episode 7, and There's also other aliens on that planet in episode. Oh, actually, that might be the other. That might be the water planet. But in any case, it's weird to me. It would have definitely interrupted the Luke reveal at the end of episode 7, which everybody enjoyed. Same with the X-Wing, and the X-Wing doesn't really play a role in this film, so I don't know why it was included. Some people thought the nods to other Star Wars stuff in Rogue One was ridiculous, but I don't know, I like the use of the X-Wing, but like they didn't really use it was a thing. Like, it was like, oh, like I thought Luke was gonna do a whole bunch of stuff with the X-Wing since he showed up in it, but that never happened. Or Rey was gonna use the X-Wing. All the Rebel stuff in this I'll get into in a moment. It's not really the pork thing. It's just that it's a awkward thing with the fans and expectations. I said it could be a director change thing. They might have been not quite done on the technology and the concept of the porg. I don't hope there's not like a special edition where the porgs show up in episode 7. And the more I talk about the porgs, the more I'm going to be upset about the porgs. So we're talking more about them now. Try to keep it in chronological order. Chewie shows up, and I don't know. Even in the opening James Bond-ish sequence, I felt like George Lucas was right. Bring back Han Solo for Return of the Jedi. Without Han Solo or at least Harrison Ford in some capacity in this movie, I felt like something was missing in a Star Wars trilogy. At least Star Wars post Episode 4 chronology Star Wars film. He has a lot of presence. He's a great actor. He's charismatic. He knows how to work. Everyone else, it didn't quite work for me. I mean, they did good stuff, and some stuff was excellent, but like acting-wise, character-wise, something was definitely missing with Han Solo missing, and I don't think they made up for it in this film. It doesn't feel the same. Episode 7 doesn't have George Lucas. Episode 8 doesn't have Han Solo. Something feels missing. So, this is a big problem I have with the beginning, the second scene with the rogues, with the rebellion, or the resistance, or whatever you want to call them, in Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. I'm going to say something that's going to seem like a spoiler, but it really isn't. It sort of gets even worse the more I talk about it. So, there's that whole dramatic thing in the trailer where he's like, Kylo Ren, you must destroy your mother, or something like that. And then he's like, blasts the ship, and you see the ship explode and everything, and the ship explodes, and then she's in it, and you're like, this is, keep in mind that I'm doing this in chronological order, this is like 25 minutes into the film, and I'm like, wow, that's an interesting risk, and I'm thinking about it like forever, like, I figure they would have given a better send-off to Leia. On the other hand, it was a risk. It's like the episode 8, episode 5 of Star Wars. You know, you gotta take a risk, and I want to see how it plays out. And it became very hard for me to watch the rest of the film thinking about this. So I'm just like spacing out over it. And I'm like, this is very distracting. Like, how am I going to understand the whole film? Like, maybe I have to watch it twice to watch the film with Leia, knowing that Leia dies, as opposed to like figuring out that she dies so early in the film. Good tactic for rewatching, getting that extra revenue in, although it's really off-putting and distracting because like it's so early in the film. So watching it a second time or something will make it more clear or something. Maybe there's something else in the film that builds up to it, or is a payoff for that. And so, I'm going to get into another spoiler. A really big spoiler. So if you really don't want to hear, don't listen to any crap I have to say. You have 10 seconds before I reveal the spoiler. 9, 10. Snoke dies in the film. So, I figure that Leia's death would be a good build-up to Snoke's death. I was like, wow. The Leia death everyone knew about because, you know, how to say it without being too crude, of course. There was the passing of Carrie Fisher, and you knew there would be a moment like that, like Rogue One. There was like the whole, she shows up at the end of the film for A New Hope and all that stuff. This one is the next film, and you figure it'd be when she passes away and stuff. And of course you want to do it with some class and stuff. However, whatever the case may be, and is obvious, and everyone knows that that was a thing everyone was going to talk about, like Han Solo coming back in Return of the Jedi. However, no one expected Snoke to pass away. So it's like foreshadowing of that. One person on the light side, one person on the dark side. So I'm thinking, wow, this is some crazy stuff going on. Like, how dare they do this so early with Princess Leia passing away? They took a risk, they pissed some people off. It's a good risk, though. It's Star Wars, you know, it's something you want people to talk about and debate about. A risk that has good sides and bad sides. And the good sides and the pros of the decision are very good, and the bad isn't as bad. So it was a good risk to take. That being said, however, instead we get floating Princess Leia in space who doesn't explode, and forget that you can't breathe or and you'll explode in space. But this just looked really awful. Like, I had this horrible feeling that Rian Johnson didn't really want this to happen. Because, like, this looks like John Hancock, Metal Jesus Rock's friend, said there's some cringe-worthy stuff in this film. And I felt like this was definitely what he was talking about. Like, it looked like some friggin' Superman 4 special effects, or like a Microsoft Paint special effect, or like Poochie from The Simpsons episode floats away, and then instead of dying, Princess Leia stays alive. And then she uses the Force. That makes sense. And then propels herself to the ship's escape pod and reoxygenizes it so that she can go for the door. And then, oh, I get to why that's even weirder later, but it's just ridiculous. But luckily they make it so brief that you don't really notice it, unless you think about it. And then it gets worse on the rogue side of things. She just really doesn't do anything on the rest of the film. There's the one thing where, okay, the thing probably people had bad criticism about with Princess Leia in Episode 7 was probably just two things that were probably addressed about this with Princess Leia in Episode 7. She wasn't really a hard ass, not to mention they don't really do any Jedi stuff with her which is implied in Return of the Jedi with the whole being the twin of Luke Skywalker or whatever. Like, she's supposed to antagonize Luke and Han and is really hard to get along with in the first 2 or 3 films of the series. And then in episode 7, she just goes and hugs everybody and has a brief cameo and is barely seen in the film. She feels sad about Han dying. Okay, that's not really Princess Leia, but then again, it's like considered by some to be like a reboot, hence not the episode 7, 8 titles and the Resistance and First Order, etc. Which some people are confused about, but if you interpret it as a reboot, like, the names are fine. Leia does a little bit of the Force powers, and I think everybody regrets it now. She also does a little bit of the hard-ass thing, and I don't get why she does that, which I'll get into in a little bit. So, in any case, she does a lot of stuff, and it still ends up in a coma, which is ridiculous. Like, you survived a blast of a ship, breathing outside of space, which may be in, like, their magical space fantasy universe. Makes sense that she can breathe in space, but whatever. And then she still gets to the ship and still ends up in a coma despite surviving all that. So they don't really explain that too well, but whatever. And for so, how do they connect this? Like, the Rebel stuff, just to sum it up, is very disjointed. To get back to the Leia stuff, I want to talk about Leia. Don't want to talk about something else. I forgot to talk about. Okay, she becomes a hard ass later on in the film when Poe Dameron, he's doing this whole thing about, we gotta do this now, we gotta be angry. And, you know, Oscar Isaac, good actor and everything, good performance. But what he does in the film doesn't fucking matter, to be quite honest. Sorry for my language. But he doesn't really matter. And that's the other thing I didn't get about freaking episode 7. Everybody made a big deal about Poe Dameron. But, I don't know, I guess he had something to do with the plot in that one. You know, Finn was a main character. He helps save Finn. Finn goes to Rey, etc. Finn's not really a main character in this. There's some cool scenes in like a casino, and he goes along with the new character Rose, which is pretty cool. Well acted actress, etc. Good performance. But they have this whole plot, which has nothing to do with anything, considering that the second episode, episode 8, or The Last Jedi, is all about Luke. The important stuff, at least. No, let's just pretty much say it. The whole story is about Luke and dealing with Kylo Ren and teaching Rey and what Rey's supposed to do about Ren and that whole dynamic between those 3. And then you have Snoke and other stuff going on. Let's talk about Snoke anyway. There's a clear problem with the Force stuff and the Rebel stuff. And it's never been this bad in a Star Wars film before. I can say a lot of bad stuff about like the Clone Wars cartoon movie that went to theaters, but the Jedi stuff and the other stuff at least is incorporated better. Even though the plot was absolutely terrible, at least it flowed. Like this, I really don't know why the Rebels in this film. I feel like originally Rian Johnson, he did, from what it seemed at least, he loved to do the opening scene with the Rebels. It's a great scene. They do the whole thing with the Star Destroyers, with the turrets, well crafted, and that's well built, and then you feel really intimidated by the Empire, or the First Order, or whatever. And then, like, well, that was a really kick-ass first scene. However, the producers probably told Rian Johnson, you gotta do that for half the film. So he bullshits it, and then makes the half of the film unwatchable in terms of what they do with the Rebellion or the Resistance or whatever. except for probably the horse scene with Finn. The characters are likable and watchable, but like they're just not very important. Like, and I don't even know why Finn. How did Finn even recover? Like they just like, oh, he's like that. Like he's not a main character even. Like I don't even know why he's in this film. Rose is alright, but I felt like she was probably left over from like a Rogue One script and then incorporated this script because like they didn't use her. And they wanted to introduce a new character because the producer said so, but like Rian Johnson didn't really want to do any of that stuff. She does a great role. She does a great job. It's a great role, but like, this really didn't feel this scene. These scenes are basically what you would do and take it out of the theatrical cut. Like some of the scenes that were cut from like Back to the Future and stuff. Like you see scenes are cut and you're like, these are scenes that should be cut because like they don't really help the tone of the film. They're not secondary characters for the most part. They're characters that aren't really even in the film. They're part of a different film. Maybe they should have made Star Wars The Last Jedi a two-parter. Because everyone does that. Friggin' has been done. Pretty sure Disney fans would pay to see... Star Wars fans would pay to see different parts for a film. And separate... Well, they have enough dedication to spend enough money on two movies, obviously. Not to mention you have so many movies going on anyway. Release one in the summer, release one in the winter to cut it off with all the Luke stuff, and that would have been fine. The Rebel stuff really doesn't work in this film. Rey and Finn don't really have a moment at the end of the film either, despite the fact that they were in Episode 7, which is very weird. And that seems like sabotage to me. Like, maybe that might even cut you short, actually, because, like, they would have, like, a 10-minute conversation. It's like a 2-hour film. Like, people complain with the film. It's only, like, 2 hours and 7 minutes. It's not, like, an actual 3-hour film. Well, with the commercials, yeah, probably. Rey and Finn don't really talk. There's some weird stuff going on, now that I think about it. Rose stabs Finn with the electrical thing. Leia shoots Dameron. I think that was supposed to be funny, but it didn't really come all across like that. And there's other bits of weird humor in it too, like I didn't get into the porgs yet. BB-8 saves the day for the rebellion or resistance, sorry. And how he does it is does this whole like character with Rose and Finn betrays him. Spoiler alert. But you don't really get enough time to learn about him. Snoke, say what you want about him, but he got a lot more time than that guy did. I don't even know why he betrayed them, because, like, there's no payoff for it. Like, there's no, like, good scene where, like, he gets blown to bits or whatever. Like, he just sort of disappears because, like, everyone else in the show disappears. Like, you didn't need to make him important. There's so much to talk about this film. Gotta figure out how to tackle this. So the character I'm talking about is like, they call him DJ or something. Or like, they don't even bother to give him like a full name. It's like DJ, all right. So he's like this guy, and he's helping them to get a plan. So they can stop the First Order from doing some stuff that I don't really care about, because this film is all about Luke, Rey, and Kylo, and Snoke, and the Jedi stuff, and the Sith stuff, etc. Like, this is pretty much what... Not exactly, but this is like Red Letter Media talking about, like, when they cut in between, like, the 4 scenes and, like, the Phantom Menace and stuff. The 4 battles. But they have all these characters, and they're not really used that well in the film. Like they could, like Wedge and Cheelies, like Biggs and all those other guys. They were really minor characters in the film. And you don't spend so much time with them that you feel like it's annoying. Like, you feel like, well, that's cool. He's that guy. I want to know more about him. You don't go, let's actually talk about him, but not, like, don't give him a plot. There's the worst outcome from it. Like, this is already a short film, which is weird. Not that short, but short enough. So, in some plot about the First Order and the Resistance, which I don't care about, because it's, again, a Jedi Sith storyline. There's some plot from the First Order to destroy everything. And I really have no idea what the First Order is trying to do. And I don't know if this came out by Snoke, or they probably needed a general to execute this plot so I could care about it, but they don't. I'm starting to not care about it, and I've been ranting about it for a while. So anyway, they got to do the thing where they sneak in someplace, and then they don't sneak in, and then they get caught, and then there's a trap, and then there's a patrol. It's like, oh, you're the traitor, and then whatever. But there's some cool scenes from it. Captain Phasma gets a cool scene in it. The cool scenes, but I didn't really feel like they needed to be in this film. They need to be separate. Phasma traps them, gives the orders to execute Rose and Finn. Tired talking about this. Sorry. Deep breaths. Take my glasses off. Really the stress. I don't remember. So Captain Phasma, let's just get to the parts I remember so I can finish this off before I get tired. Has some cool moments. Captures Finn. It would be cooler than this first episode, actually, considering that there was more time for Finn. But, like, since Finn's less important, it sort of hurts Phasma, although Phasma has more to do. Captures Finn. Orders the execution of those two. And then in the end, there's a moment where it's between, like, those Rose and Finn versus Phasma. You double team Phasma. Phasma gets defeated. But enough for him to come back. Because, like, there's choice. I like Phasma, but, like, that's obviously what they're doing. Like, I felt like they gave her more story because, like, there was complaints about it. But, like, again, you have the problem where it's, like, Biggs and Wedge didn't have a lot of dialogue. And they had a lot of great scenes that were in Star Wars A New Hope. And they were still cut. Those elite scenes were really good. These elite scenes suck. And then they kept them in, which is even worse. And, like, when A New Hope was made, I don't think they were originally intending on making, like, Big Stark Lighter or Wedge and Cheelie's toys out of them. They were just trying to tell a story, I think. Or at least it wasn't blatantly obvious. Like, Phasma is a minor character. She does certain things right, like Veers and Piet and etc. But they gave her such an overdramatic death, which may not even be a death, and had her fight Finn and Rose. But Rose isn't that important to the script in this film, and neither is Finn. Although Finn was important in the last one, and people like Finn, it felt like over gratuitous how they're having Finn battle off with Phasma. And as cool it was to see the lightsabers that, like, the the General Grievous guards have in or light staffs or whatever, electric staffs that General Grievous has guards have in Episode 3. It was definitely overgratuitous because they almost did exactly the same as they did with Finn and TR-88R or whatever his name is, Traitor. I have to get more clear about it later. I've been ranting on for too long. Let me get to something else. If there's anything else left, or if they have any manager left to talk about anything else. There's one cool scene that seems pretty Interstellar inspired and was probably used from the technology from Interstellar with the Tesseract and the other cool visual effects scenes in those films. There's a scene with multiple rays that looks like it might have even been inspired by like a commercial that was like for Sunday Night Football or something, where they use multiple rays, and that was pretty cool. Another cool, Rian Johnson, very good indie director, likes the visual effects, likes visual storytelling. The shots here are just excellent. And another shot I like to discuss is the shot of the Snoke chamber. You have the James Bond opening, and you have a Snoke chamber, a chamber that has Snoke guards that's just looks straight out of a Ken Adams James Bond film. It's just excellent. The good use of reds and suits, and then the fighting, and yeah, there's a fight that involves Snoke. Pretty much what I really wanted. They're doing a lot of stuff that I wanted to happen in the prequels, like in Rogue One and this film, and this is really what I wanted. Like a whole bunch of cool looking different lightsabers. Some of them didn't look as cool, or could have been a little bit more visual effectsy, but at least you have the whole presence of like guards fighting them. And I'm not exactly sure why these guards are fighting. Should I talk about it? I mean, this is a spoiler cast, but whatever. Let me get to it first before I get. So another big moment for the Star Wars film, The Last Jedi, Episode 8, is, as I said before, Snoke dying, and there's this whole theme in the film where Kylo Ren is talking to Rey, and Rey's like, "Don't talk to," and Luke is like, "Don't talk to Kylo Ren." Okay. Very good, very dramatic. The whole Rey has so many powers thing, force sensitive stuff, and the hallucinations or mind games, that stuff is just excellent. And another one of those things that I like more from Episode 7 after watching Episode 8. Understanding the Rey character a bit more. And the visual effects and the cinematic stuff. Absolutely great. The Tesseract stuff. The Snoke chamber. There's like a little zoom in on a hologram that I enjoyed. So many good shots in this film. A little zoom in on a hologram in the beginning of the film. In the beginning, James Bondish opening act was just phenomenal. And you get a lot of that with Rian Johnson. I knew watching the trailers was going to be great, and it's just such a visual spectacle. Like, when Han Solo dies in Episode 7, it was a bit unfortunate. I probably would have had a better reaction if I hadn't known what was going to happen, which is unfortunate. But I felt like it was shot not that well. I felt like the Rian Johnson shots in this film were a lot better. Some of them were debatable. Yeah. Some of the shots you could tell Rian Johnson really cared about, because like they were just so detailed and stuff. Like Kylo Ren shooting that Carrie Fisher, sorry. I always say Carrie Fisher again, sure. Leia, General Princess Leia Organa Skywalker Solo. Shoots down her ship. And like there's like this dramatic thing where it's like zooming in on the hands and stuff, so he's like nervous shooting the ship. They don't mention, Kylo doesn't mention, does he mention? They made a whole deal about that thing when he shoots Leia's ship, but when Leia is back again, it's not made as epic. And then he goes after Luke. And then, so, this movie really sucks then. I just thought about it now. Of course there's no, let me get to the end of the film. So, the whole thing about the end of the film is that Luke Skywalker isn't the last Jedi. Rey is, and then there's like this kid at the end of the film who has like this Rogue Squadron put it on, and it's like, oh, Rogue Squadron, and like apparently he uses, it's really hard to see because like the screen is so dark, but apparently he uses the Force push to like move a broom, and like just like anyone's gonna be a last Jedi, and like obviously one of the things you're thinking is this is a gimmick for little kids to go to Jedi Training Academy at Walt Disney World for. The other thing is like, wow, you're like, anybody, well, they're basically stealing the ending of The Dark Knight Rises where anybody can be a hero. And obviously the trailers are promoting the fact that like Luke Skywalker, well, the title, like Leia's dead and then maybe Luke dies. But instead they have Luke die and not Leia die. But that doesn't work because Leia is Force Sensitive too. Although maybe the whole idea of the film is that he isn't the last Jedi, so that's why Leia is still there. But if Leia survives and obviously he's not the last Jedi, but then there's less of a point to his dramatic thing if Leia's still there. So that seems like a really bad edit to me, in retrospect. I think about this film again. But this, of course, this is like the awesome scenes, again with the Snoke chamber, the Tesseract, the Knights of Ren or Snoke fighting scenes with all the different lightsabers was pretty cool. That doesn't feel like the same film where they're debating on Rey, because that happens, and it happens in front of all the rebels, and they make them do all these like AT-ST stuff, which is right after when a stupid thing where BB-8 pilots freaking AT-AT and then leads a bunch of AT-ATs to shoot a whole bunch of First Order guys so that he can save Finn and Rose. They were like the artists in this film. Again, the Rebel stuff hurts. And the more I think about the Rebel stuff hurts even more because they use Carrie Fisher too. This is Leia. I do not approve. I mean, the film isn't the same film as the one done by J.J. Abrams. There's producers working on it, meddling with it. The film only has 2 years, has a lot of special effects. And yeah, you hear me say about the Rebel stuff again. I have to talk about the Snoke thing later because, like, I don't know the Korean now. There's other stuff I want to talk about, but I feel like that's enough. 40 minutes of content should be good enough. What are your thoughts on Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi? Do you think the Rebel stuff was incorporated well? What do you think of the visual effects, the characters, the actors? Do they mesh well? Captain Phasma, Finn, Rose, Rey, Ren. lawyer firm. Princess Leia's handling of her life, how they handled Chewie. Chewie was, I'll talk about Chewie now. Chewie was really weird. He shows up in front of Luke, and it's very, very comical and off-putting. And as a friggin' annoying bastard that I am, I enjoyed it like crazy. It was really weird for anyone who hates that kind of stuff. What do you think about not having a Han Solo in the film? How they handle Princess Leia? How they handle Snoke? The plot twists? And everything else with the film? Please comment below.